Internal Revenue Service IRS tax news. Non-traditional families may qualify for advanced child tax credit payments. On a side note, before we continue, as a tax consultant for Halloween, I'm planning on doing two things right here, right now at the same time. Slay some business bloodsuckers on the one hand, not literally, don't sue me or send the FBI after me or anything like that, and eat lunch on the other. To do this, I'm raising the stakes. A wooden one in my left, medium rare one in my right. What was that? Would you just get back to reading the IRS post for Peter's sake before he has to go back to work picking a peck of pickled peppers? Okay, back to the task at hand here. This one's for you, Peter, and all the hard-working pickled pepper pickers out there, like Paul, Pat, Peyton. COVID Tax Tip 2021-150, October 12, 2021. Families come in all shapes and sizes, and some families may not realize they could receive advance payments of the 2021 child tax credit in the last months of this year. So note that the IRS tax code is basically designed around a traditional type of family. So if you have a non-traditional kind of family structure, it can be a little bit more difficult to see how you fit in to the tax law or how the tax law applies in some cases. In this case, we're looking into the child tax credit and the advanced child tax credit, which has changed just for traditional families as well. So let's just recap it quickly, and then we'll talk about possibly how it could apply to a non-traditional type of family. So the child tax credit normally is going to be a credit that when you file the tax return could possibly result in a refund. In 2021, then they made the changes to the law to basically increase the amount of the credit that you would normally get by filing the tax return by April 15th of 2022. They also made more of it refundable, and then in essence they took half of that credit and tried to allocate it over the last 6 months of 2021 in the form of a prepayment, and so you can get access to the money sooner. This is a common trend that the IRS is basically doing when they're trying to get the incentives of the money out to people sooner, to give this kind of prepayment out there. The prepayment then can't be based on the actual information for 2021 taxes because they don't have it until you file the tax return by April 15th of 2022. Therefore, they have to base it on some prior year, like the 2020 or 2019 tax returns, or possibly a non-filer kind of sign-up tool or something like that, in order to get the information. So you can see this works most of the time, but if you have a situation where you have the dependents that's going from one person to another with joint custody types of situations, or if you had a new child in 2021, or if you changed custody in some way and possibly now a child is now in custody of one person versus another, you can see how these are going to be problems with regards to the advanced payments, and you might have to take added steps to either see if you can get the advance payment, and or if you don't get the advance payment, it's not the end of the world because you should still have access to the tax credit. You'll just get it when you file the tax return by April 15th of 2022. The dangerous kind of situation in these non-traditional kind of formats would be that if the IRS sends out payments to the wrong person, because they're basing that information on the prior year tax return, possibly in a situation where a child goes from the custody of one parent to another and so on, and therefore the IRS has information on their records of them being in a custody situation or claimed as a dependent in a different situation than will be in 2021. IRS sends out the prepayments and they send it to the wrong person based on that information. And then you've got this situation where that person should really kind of send it back, or they might owe money at the end of the year, and the other person didn't get the prepayments, and they're going to claim the credit when they file the tax return. So those are kind of the situations that could come up that you want to be aware of. So the IRS urges grandparents, foster parents, and people caring for siblings or other relatives to check their eligibility. There's a link here to check your eligibility. For tax year 2021, families claiming the child tax credit will receive up to $3,000 per qualifying child between the ages of 6 and 17 at the end of 2021, up to $3,600 per qualifying child under age 6 at the end of 2021. So in other words, they increased the amount of the credit. So if you don't get any prepayments during 2021, the full credit would be these $3,000 and the $3,600 given the age group 6 to 17 or under 6. So the total of the advance payments paid in 2021 will be up to 50% of the child tax credit. So typically what they did is they took the credits that you would get they estimated what the credits would be based on these 3,000 and 3,600 per qualifying child, and then in essence whatever your credit would have been depending on how many children you had and what their ages are and so on. They'd calculate the total credit based on your prior year tax return. Then they divided it by 6 if they could and sent it out half of it. Sorry, they divided it by 2, cut it in half. Then they divided it by 6 and sent it out in the last 6 months of 2021, or that's what they're in the process of doing. Now you're in a situation that if you're in a situation where you didn't get the prepayments and you qualify for the prepayments, you might still be able to get that 50% basically of the credit that you would receive sent out. So in other words, it's not a set amount for the prepayments. The prepayments, they calculated as if there were 6 prepayments, but if you didn't get the first couple because the IRS didn't have the proper information and then you get the prepayments later, you would expect those prepayments to be larger because they're still going to be representing half of the total credit in essence if the IRS does it right. And if I'm interpreting this properly, which I believe I am, but this is a completely new thing clearly for this year. So a qualifying child can be a filer's son or daughter, stepchild, eligible foster child, sibling, including step-sibling or half-sibling, a descendant of any of the above, for example, a grandchild, niece, or nephew. Generally, a family qualifies for advanced child tax credit payments if they have a qualifying child. Also, an individual or their spouse, if married filing joint return, must have their main home in one of the 50 states or the District of Columbia for then half the year. In addition to the relationship requirements above, the child must also satisfy the following conditions. 1. For tax year 2021, a qualifying child is an individual who does not turn 18 before January 1st, 2022, and the individual does not provide more than one half of his or her own support during 2021. Number 2, the individual lives with the taxpayer for more than one half of tax year 2021. For exceptions to this requirement, see IRS Publication 972, Child Tax Credit and Credit for Other Dependents. So if you have a custody kind of situation and or the child, there's exceptions. You can go there. There's a link to that here. 3, the individual is properly claimed as the taxpayer's dependent. For more information about how to properly claim an individual as a dependent, you can see IRS Publication 501, Dependents, Standard Deduction, and Filing Information. There's a link to that here. Number 4, the individual does not file a joint return with the individual spouse for tax year 2021 or files it only to claim a refund of withheld income tax or established tax paid. Number 5, the individual was a U.S. citizen, U.S. national, or U.S. resident alien. For more information on this condition, see IRS Publication 519, U.S. Tax Guide for Aliens. How to get advance payments. The IRS's non-filer sign-up tool, there's a link to that here, helps people who normally don't have to file a tax return complete a simplified return to get advanced child tax credit payments, the recovery, rebate, credit, and economic impact payments. So note, if you're not getting the advance payments and you think you qualify for them, then it's possible that either the IRS has the information and you have a kind of custody type of situation where the child wasn't claimed as a dependent in the prior year, so the IRS didn't know who to send the money to, or you have a new child or a new dependent in some way, and therefore the IRS didn't know based on the prior year tax return, or you haven't filed the tax return at all. The IRS doesn't have the information. If you haven't filed the tax return, and you might be saying you're not required to file the tax return because your income is below a certain threshold, note that even though you're not required to file, you may very likely benefit from filing a lot of times these days because the IRS has been increasing the stimulus payments, the refundable credits, such as the child tax credit. Therefore, you might still want to file your tax return even if not required to. And the easiest way to do that or to give them the information is with this non-filer tool. But the free file tax software is still available. So if you haven't filed for 2020, that's the information that they would first use in order to see what the child tax credit would be. then you might want to get access to the software, and I think it'll end by October 15th. So you got a couple days to still access the free file software and actually file the tax return. That'll give you access to the child tax credit and any benefits you might have that would be out there, including withholdings that you haven't received back for a refund, and possibly the earned income tax credit, which is another huge credit that you may qualify from. If you don't want to file that, then you can use the non-filer sign-up tool instead, and that should be a more simplified thing to give the basic information. Still qualifies you for the rebate and possibly the child tax credit if you give them the proper information, but you don't have access to anything else you might get a benefit from, such as withholdings that you haven't received back if you don't owe any taxes, and the earned income credit, which can be significant if that is applicable as well, which you can get access to those by filing the tax return. So the IRS tool is available through October 15th. So this tool is only available through October 15th as well. People who are required to file a tax return should check irs.gov in the coming week. The IRS Child Tax Credit Update Portal, there's a link to that here, will be updated to allow families to inform the IRS about the qualifying children they will claim on their 2021 tax return. The IRS can then adjust the family's estimated 2021 child tax credit and therefore adjust the amount of monthly advanced child tax credit payments. If a family doesn't receive an advanced child tax credit payment for a qualifying child, they can claim for 2021, they may claim the full amount of the allowable child tax credit for that child by filing a 2021 tax return. So the question then would come up in terms of, what if I had a child that I can claim that wasn't on my tax return in the prior year, for example? So if you haven't filed the prior year tax return, or the IRS doesn't have the information, you would think you would need to file in essence. And if you're in a situation where you're saying, hey, this one wasn't on my prior year tax return, but I'm claiming them in 2021 and they should qualify in 2021, you might want to then check out the IRS Child Tax Credit Update Portal. There's a link to that here, which they say will be updated to allow families to inform the IRS about the qualifying child they will claim in 2021 tax return. So hopefully that that can cover that. You might be able to get access to the advance payments if you're in that situation, getting the money a little bit sooner. If you don't get the money sooner, it's not the end of the world, because you could still get access to the full credit when you file the tax return for 2021 by April 15th, 2022. It's just a time lag that you'll have. And because if you don't get any prepayments, you'll get the full credit when you file the tax return. If you take the prepayments, then when you file the tax return, you'll calculate the tax and you'll have to subtract out how much you already got from the prepayments to figure out the difference in the benefit that you'll still get at the point in time you file the tax return for 2021 in tax year 2022. Okay, there's information to all those wonderful resources here, and there'll be a link to this in the description.